Good evening and welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for Thursday, February 22nd, 2018.
For anyone who has seen the show in the past, the slide show is going to follow the same format that we have used for the last couple of years. As you will remember, the first document that is prepared at the conclusion of the fiscal year, the beginning of the new calendar year, is the annual debt statement. This slide shows that the total bonds and notes for the school district stand at $26.4 million. The deduction column is actually incorrect. That should also say 26 million. Total bonds and notes for the sewer utilities stands at 9,112,000, and I believe I may have a mistake there as well. I apologize. And the municipal debt is $14,485,000. On the next slide, you see the 3-year average of our ratables, the equalized values for the municipality, and at the bottom is the calculation for the amount of debt that is expressed as a percentage of the equalized values. I believe the permitted amount is 3.5%, and you'll see that our debt stands at 0.418, so less than half of 1%. So that is a situation that has not varied much over the years. We do have more debt now than we did previously because we have been annually authorizing new debt. The next slide, this comes from the annual financial statement, which is the second major document that is prepared wrapping up the prior year, and this comes before the formal audit is completed. The annual financial statement is referred to as unaudited, but it is very reliable in terms of what it tells us. And what you see, this is a summary of the results of operations from 2017, and you'll see that there is an excess of collections of miscellaneous revenues of $78,000. There is a deficit of collections of delinquent taxes of $11,000. That means of the amount that was outstanding at the end of 2016 that we anticipated collecting in 17, we fell a little bit short of our target, so 11,000. Current taxes, that's the amount that was levied. We collected $970,000 over and above the levy, and I'll explain how that happens when we talk about the reserve for uncollected taxes. The next category, which is referred to as MRNA, is miscellaneous revenues not anticipated, and that generated $974,000, just under $975,000. What MRNA is, and again, using the terminology that the state dictates, miscellaneous revenue not anticipated, means it was not anticipated as part of the budget. It wasn't used to balance the 2017 budget. It does not mean that we didn't anticipate collecting it. We did. The reason that we don't anticipate these particular miscellaneous categories is that many of them are temporary. They might be a one-shot influx of revenue, for example, a grant from FEMA for hurricane damage, those sorts of things, but also rents that we collect from cell towers. And you all know that we had a couple of temporary cell towers which have now finally come down. Well, with them coming down, the rent received for them is also going to be lost. So MRNA next year in 2018 will likely be reduced a bit, and we didn't anticipate those rents as revenue for that reason, because they will eventually go away. So we didn't make them part of our permanent anticipation of revenues. And then the unexpended balances of appropriation reserves is the amount of money that was appropriated in 2016 for appropriations, that's the spending side of the budget, that weren't spent in 2016, and then at the end of the succeeding year, they lapse. So assuming no bills or anything came in to be paid out of those reserves, the amount that's left at the end of the succeeding year lapses into surplus. All of these affect the fund balance, the surplus. So pluses or minuses against the surplus balance. There were some other minor small credits of $1,200 and a couple of miscellaneous debits that totaled $30,000. And this is basically a summary of some of the stuff that I just said, but showing you the detail. The miscellaneous revenues anticipated was 2.309. We realized 2,388,000. The receipts from delinquent taxes, we expected to collect 435,000, and we only collected 423. The amount to be raised for taxes for the municipal budget was 9.3, and we collected just under 10.3. So that was that $934,000 excess that went to surplus. And then the library tax is what it is. We anticipated $1,064,000 to support the library, and that was what was realized and turned over to the library. The end result is that if you jump to the bottom line, the 2017 surplus, at the end of 2017, the surplus stood at $3,973,000. And you'll see that that is a reduction from the prior 3 years. It goes back to just over the 2013 levels. And that was partially expected, not completely. I think I cautioned or predicted last year that of the $3.2 million that we used as a revenue in the budget, the amount of surplus that was used in the 2017 budget, that we would not be able to replenish all of that, but we would replenish a good portion of it. And we did replenish a good portion of it, but we had one significant reportable matter that impacted us, and that was that we, in the fourth quarter, when fourth quarter taxes come due, they're due on November 1st. There's a 10-day grace period, and typically following that 10-day grace period, delinquent notices go out so that people are reminded, those who didn't pay during that 10-day period, that their taxes are due before the end of the year. And for a variety of reasons, those delinquent notices did not get out in time, and as a result, our collections of 2017 taxes were off a little bit. Where we have been averaging 99% collection rate, the collection rate for 2017 was 98.5%, and that's what then results in a reduction in the amount of fund balance that's available. It's not solely, we didn't miss by 800,000. As I said, we did anticipate that we would be off a little bit. And if you go back to the prior sheet where the results of operations showed that we collected $934,000 in excess of the levy, in the prior year we collected $1.3 million in excess. So it was really a drop of about $400,000. That reflects itself in two negative ways. One is that it provides a smaller fund balance to use, and the other thing is that it will cause an increase in the non-spending appropriation that is known as the reserve for uncollected taxes. That is an artificial appropriation that is designed to make sure that we levy more than what is actually needed for the county, the school, and the municipal budget operations in order to collect sufficient funds. As you know, the county and the school get 100% of their levy, whether we collect it or not. We are the collector, so we're obligated to budget for what's called the reserve for uncollected taxes. And in its simplest form, what it is, if for example, we needed to collect $50 million to fund all three budgets, well, we know when we send out the tax bills that we're not going to collect 100%. We know now we're going to collect typically, anywhere from 97.5% to 99%. The difference, the piece that we know going in that we're not likely to collect, is the reserve for uncollected taxes. That gets added to our budget in order to artificially raise the amount levied when we send out the tax bills. Okay, so when you fail to hit your target, you have less surplus to use, and the reserve for uncollected taxes goes up. And I'll jump ahead and let you know that the end result of that is that we are going to be looking at a 1 cent tax increase this year. Our annual talk about budget caps. Municipalities must comply with a state mandated cap on spending, known as the appropriations cap. And then there is also a levy cap that is a cap on the amount of taxes that can be levied. By state law this year, the appropriations cap is set at 2.5%. That's tied into the Consumer Price Index, and the state certifies the number back in the late fall so that you can prepare your budget accordingly. The levy cap is fixed at 2%. There has been no change to that. That's pretty much locked in. I don't anticipate that there's going to be a change to that. And with regard to both of these caps, this budget is fine. It fully complies with both of the state mandates. This next slide shows you the appropriation cap calculation. Total general appropriations for 2017 stood at just under $15 million. There are exceptions that are deducted from the cap base of $3.8 million, and these are for LoSAP, the library, grants, capital improvement fund, debt service, and the lovable reserve for uncollected taxes. That then reduces the total appropriations upon which the cap is applied to $11,128,000. When you do the math and apply the 2.5% cap to that number, the allowable increase is $278,000. We have available to us from 2016 cap bank of $379,000. That's the amount that we were under the cap. 2017 cap bank available of $390,000, and a total increase that would be allowed within the cap of just over $1 million. The actual budget proposed increases the appropriations within the cap by $272,000. So it is still under the $278,000 to 2.5% cap, but it's fairly close. Next slide is an overview of the 2018 budget, and you'll see from the left-hand column is 2017, the middle column is 2018, and then the right-hand column is the difference from the prior year. And in 17, we used $3,216,500 of surplus in the budget as a revenue. This year, we're proposing to only use $3 million. The local miscellaneous revenues, we had $573 last year. We're anticipating $566,800 this year. State aid, until we hear otherwise, we're anticipating that will remain at $836,467. That hasn't changed in, I think it's about 7 or 8 years now. I don't know what the governor has in store, but I haven't seen anything suggesting that there's going to be a change. Public and private programs at the beginning of 2017 was $11,588. This year, $15,940. That number changes throughout the year as we do receive grants and then do budget amendments to appropriate those grants and to take in the revenues. So that's the number as it stands. You already heard tonight that we're going to be receiving a $190,000 grant from DOT for road paving, so that number that you're looking at there is already obsolete. Delinquent taxes, we anticipated $435 last year, and even though we fell a little short of that, because the delinquent taxes this year are significantly increased by the events that I spoke about earlier, we're allowed to anticipate more, and we are now going to anticipate this year that we'll collect $550,000 of the delinquencies that were outstanding at the end of 2017. Construction code fees, we anticipated $550 last year. We're going to anticipate $550 again this year. Library taxes is going to go up from $1,064,000 to $1,086,000. That's a $21,000 increase. And local purpose taxes will go from $8,251,000 to $8,691,000. That's a total increase of $440,000 and represents about 1 penny on the tax rate when we do that calculation. And you'll see the next to last line, the reserve for uncollected taxes, goes up from $1,004,000 to just under $1,006,000. So the total general appropriations are up $358,000, and half of that, fully half of that increase in appropriations is due to the increase in the reserve for uncollected taxes. And the increase on the revenue side is due largely because of the less surplus available to be used. This is the levy cap bank calculation going back to 2014. There was $423,000 left in the levy cap bank that actually expired in 2017 because we didn't use it. The 2015 levy cap bank that is available is $654,000. There is $720,000 available from 16 and $322,000 available from 2017. So the total levy cap bank that's available is $1,696,000. Now, what that means in a nutshell is that we would have been within the state allowable 2% levy cap even had we levied $1.7 million more than we did over the last 3 years. So the levy cap that is allowed this year is $8,641,000. We're proposing $8,691,000. So we are using for the first time $50,000 of the bank from 2015. The balance then of that 2015 bank of about $600,000 will lapse this year. So moving forward next year, there will still be $720,000 available from 16. There will still be $322,000 available from 17. This is the state aid going back to 2007, and you'll see that it steadily declined from 2007 to 8 to 9 to 10 and to 11, and the number that we have been living with ever since is the number that was struck in 2011. So if you do the math, I'm anticipating that we're going into the 8th year of flat state aid at $836,000. Hopefully we may be pleasantly surprised, but as I said, I haven't seen any indication or any hint about what's going to happen with this. This next slide shows school taxes during that same period of time, going from 25 million, just under 26 million in 2007, and in 2017, 37 million. So they have shown a steady increase each year. You've heard Dr. LaSousa in this room do his presentation, and their budget. They also face a cap on their budget of, I believe, 2%, and it is a real cap. They don't get adjustments. The increase in ratables that we enjoy, they eventually do see that because it's used to calculate what the tax rate is. But in terms of actual increase or adjustment to their base, that does not happen. So I guess without putting words in the doctor's mouth before he comes here this year, I think you can anticipate that the 2018 school budget is likely to see a 2% increase. County taxes going back to 2007 stood at 7.3 million. 2017 was at 9.1 million. And again, I bring this up to highlight that even when the county has no tax rate increase, that doesn't translate into no increase for Chatham Township taxpayers, because the county taxes are apportioned according to the equalized values. So as our values go up and go up more than our neighbors throughout the county, we eat a little bit bigger piece of the tax pie each year. So you see that last year, even though the county boasted no tax increase or no tax rate increase, Chatham Township paid the county $400,000 more than we did the prior year, and over the course of the past 2 years, we're up about $700,000. Next slide is the municipal purpose tax rate. This is the rate that funds our local budget. So this has nothing to do with the school, nothing to do with the county. It does include the open space tax, although I have not adjusted it yet in anticipation for what else is going to happen here tonight. But the municipal purpose tax going back to 2006 was at 28.8 cents, or 0.288 cents per $100 of assessed value. And you see that there was, it's been pretty flat, 29 cents, 28 cents, 28 cents, 29, 29, 29, 29, 29. And then in 2015, we were finally able to actually reduce it by a little over a penny. We reduced it again in 2016 by actually exactly a penny. Last year was pretty much status quo, and this year we're looking at a 1 cent increase. And I've already explained the reason for that. I like to point out that even though we have a little bit of negative news this year and that we are asking for a tax rate increase, it still puts us more than a penny behind where we were 12 years ago. And I think that's something that we can continue to be proud of. The impact of that 1 penny on the average, they say average homeowner, but the average assessed home in Chatham Township is about $780,000, and that 1 cent equals about $65 for the whole year. So a little more than $5 a month. And obviously if your assessment is higher, then the impact on you is higher. If your assessment is lower, the impact is lower. This pie chart shows how the local taxes are used. Again, this now has nothing to do with the school or the county. This has to do with the money we collect for our local budget. And not surprisingly, and I think in keeping with what the mayor mentioned earlier about our commitment, public safety is the largest single expenditure. That stands at 22%. Public works is at 21%. Insurance is the next at 15. General government, which is all the administrative functions, stands at about 11. The library is 7% of the total tax dollars, which is about the same amount as our debt service. And pension and Social Security costs about 8%. The reserve for uncollected taxes, 10%. So actually 10 cents of every dollar that we collect for local purposes goes for that non-spending appropriation. Next slide is the total tax distribution. So this is for every dollar that we do collect. This does include the school and the county. And you see that for every dollar, the school gets 68 cents, the county gets 17, and the township gets 15. So please, when you write your checks, I know you make them out to the Township of Chatham, but please keep in mind that we're going to pass on most of your money to the school and to the county. There's a requirement to disclose any structural imbalances in the budget. Revenues at risk, we're utilizing $100,000 of capital surplus. I know I said last year this would be the last year, but this really and truly will be the last year that we use that particular item of revenue. There really aren't any non-recurring cost reductions. Any of the cost reductions through reduction in personnel are permanent in nature. Looking forward to 2019, which we're required to do, we would expect that labor costs will increase by approximately 2% in 2019. It's not 18, but 19. And that health insurance costs are also likely to rise between 5 and 10. Now, I hope to be wrong about that. 2018 turned out to be a good year with regards to health insurance, in that we really didn't see any increase. There was a small increase, I think, or a small decrease in the amount of insurance for retirees, and the active employees stayed flat. There are some adjustments that are made throughout the year as people's income change, as additional dependents come on, as people get married, those sorts of things, tweak the numbers throughout the year. And as always, we'll continue to seek shared service opportunities with our neighbors, with the school, with our neighboring towns. Summary, this budget requires a 1 cent increase in the local purpose tax rate, as I mentioned, primarily due to a drop in collections for 2017, which reduced the amount of surplus available and results in an increase in reserve for uncollected taxes. Surplus at the end of 2017 stood at $3,973,000, and the township's financial position remains very strong. It is expected that with a return to the normal tax collection rate, surplus to be used in the 2018 budget will be restored. So I have every expectation that the $3 million that we're anticipating using, that we will replenish all of that. The municipal open space tax, when I wrote this, was going to remain at 1/2 cent. We have since had Finance Committee discussion, and there's an ordinance on the agenda this evening to actually increase it to 1 full cent. So when we do this, when I repeat this presentation, or if I repeat this presentation on March 22nd, that will be changed. And when it gets posted, it'll be changed, assuming that you do in fact introduce the ordinance this evening. And the township's contributions to the joint library is increased by $21,000, as previously mentioned. A modest increase in sewer user fees was adopted in 2017. I did mention that last year we were going to need to do that, and we did. The rate now should be sufficient for at least the next 2 to 3 years, barring any unforeseen operational issues in either one of these sewer utilities. Capital budget, no big surprises here. We are looking to continue the road improvement program, although we're asking for less this year. We do still have some funds remaining from the 2017 allotment. You'll recall that we, at John Rushke's urging, accelerated the road improvement program in 2017 because we had such good prices for paving. So we're picking up with continuing the program that was put in place last year and looking to supplement it with additional improvements this year. I believe we're looking to authorize or ask for authorization for an additional $500,000. That will then be on top of the $190,000 that was just awarded by the state. We're looking to continue our support of the fire departments, various building improvements, including some repairs to this building, which is starting to show some signs of its age, purchase of DPW equipment, and improvements to Colony Pool, although minor in nature, capital nonetheless. And before I end, I would like to go back again to the fire departments and the emergency squad, and again urge everyone in town to please support them financially to the greatest extent that you're able. They do a wonderful job. I unfortunately got to witness it up close and personal. I don't wish that on anybody, but we desperately need for those brave men and women to continue what they do, and they can't do it without our financial support. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the committee?
Just to clarify the road portion of your presentation, Tom, are we returning to the level of road paving that we had before this past year, or would you say that we're continuing to accelerate to continue to take advantage of any price benefits?
Well, I think, Mike, that we're going to do as much as we're able to do. The calendar has an impact on that as well, as to how much construction you can do, and we do still have projects from last year that were pushed into the first half of this year. We're at a point where we are nearly complete with the 6-year program that we laid out some 6 years ago. So at this point now, we're going to start circling back and doing some maintenance work on roads that have been paved, to do some micro sealing and that sort of stuff. I think John Rushke can better speak to that, but we're pretty close to the end of having repaved everything in town over the course of the last 6 years.
And start to talk about, more long-term again, where we're at that point.
Tom, I think it's important to re-emphasize when we talk about the increase in ratables that we mention a lot in our township when we look at tear downs and newly assessed improvements and so on. We have a real estate base essentially of 55, what's the figure?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and
Right, and-
I apologize, I did intend to
I
address
think
that.
it's important to note,
Yeah, one of the misconceptions in town is that because we have an annual increase in our ratables due to new construction, that we're like swimming in cash as a result. And I try to urge people to do the math. We added in new value in 2017 about $53 million in new ratables. That's new homes, that's improvements that people made to homes, additions, decks, anything that carried an added value to it. It was a total of $53 million. That was a total on $3 billion, right. We're over about $3.1 billion is the total rateable base. So when you add 53 million to it, it's nothing to sneeze about. It's real money, but it doesn't have a huge impact. That $53 million, when you look at the levy cap workbook, which will be another document that'll get posted, you'll see that generates about $140,000. That's all. It doesn't generate millions of dollars. It's
Right, and I think we get a little
$140,000.
hyperbolic when we talk about how our improvements are impacting our tax base, or what is
Yeah.
Chatham Township
Again,
doing with
if-
all this money, and we're getting $140,000
Yeah,
added
it's
back.
not a huge number, but it is certainly better than being in a negative position. And unfortunately, many municipalities, particularly during the economic downturn, were actually seeing a negative, a deficit in their ratables, particularly towns that are heavily reliant on commercial properties or have a lot of rental properties. Those properties tend to file tax appeals virtually every year. In any kind of economic downturn, they see reductions. So towns that rely heavily on commercial properties do not fare as well as those that are primarily residential. But at the same token, our residents bear the brunt of the burden of property taxes as opposed to those commercial properties. So, but it does not lead to, a giant influx of money.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just would ask you to talk about, because I'll probably talk about it at the next meeting, because it's a hot topic in the state, pension reform, and the difference between the state obligations and the municipal obligations, and where we are as with our pension contributions.
Okay. Again, I'm not sure how much the general public follows that subject or understands it, but the state is the only one who is delinquent in making their contributions to the pension funds. All of the municipalities, all of the counties, all of the schools, all of the colleges, anybody and everybody that contributes to the pension funds, including the employees themselves, have been current for many, many years. The state lags behind in their contribution, and because they lagged behind, they kind of dug themselves a huge hole to climb out of. So becomes a very difficult thing. That's not to say that there isn't room to take a look at the plans themselves and whether or not they might be too generous. In today's day and age, they probably are, and as somebody who expects to someday collect my pension, it's not the easiest thing for me to say that, but things needed to be changed, and they have been. There have been changes implemented that have increased the employees' share. There have been new classes of employee created depending on when you were hired, as to there's caps on how much your pension can be before it kicks into a defined contribution plan like a 401k. So it's not all now in a defined benefit program. So, but those kinds of changes take a long time to really play out. I think that the investments of the pension funds did extremely well in 2017, so I think the deficit has been reduced as far as the unfunded portion, but there's no question that it's going to remain a hot topic. Health insurance is also likely to remain a very hot topic as the state seeks ways to reduce that burden for all of us. And as you all know, health insurance is very expensive. It is one of the single highest items in our budget is the health insurance for the employees. Employees do contribute a significant portion of the premium now. We're going back 5 or 6 years ago, there was no contribution, so that's been a major change that has helped all municipalities to better absorb the cost of that benefit. I'm not sure where that's going. I don't know if anybody knows where health insurance is going. For me personally, I again think that there's almost a universal focus in the discussion is about health insurance costs and not about the delivery of health costs. And I think that has to become part of the discussion as well. You know, why does it cost so much to provide health coverage in this country, which obviously also drives the cost of health insurance premiums. The health insurance companies are not in it to lose money. There has to be a margin of profit for them to even be in the business, but the amount of claims that they pay out is extraordinary. And that's not a problem that I feel capable of solving, and probably none of you particularly like it either, because it starts to talk about socialized medicine, but health costs have to be looked at as part of the equation.
I agree. The key point is, though, from municipality's perspective, that we do not have any unfunded liabilities that we have to make up or bond for, et cetera. That would be a really bad idea. But
that's correct.
Okay.
Tom, could you explain a little bit more detail about the open space tax this year? Just kind of, you mentioned it briefly.
The open space tax has been set, as you know, at a half a penny. That's a half a cent per $100 of assessed value. That's been in place now for several years. That generates about $157,000 a year in revenue, and is primarily used at this point, that $150,000, to retire the debt that was incurred back in the early part of 2000. We had a bond issue in 2006 that included a bond ordinance that had been done to provide seed money for purchases of open space properties. When you look in the budget, you'll see the 2006 issue, about 76% of it is related to general improvements and 24% for open space purchases and improvements. So out of the open space budget, that $157,000 is used almost exclusively to pay that debt from the 2006 bond issue. Because we issued a new $2 million authorization in 2017 in order to purchase what I lovingly refer to as Pooh Corner, Kevin I think calls it the 7-acre woods, that $2 million was, we went to short-term financing, did a bond anticipation note back in July in order to be able to go ahead with that purchase. And now this July, that $2 million will come due to either renew for the $2 million or to reduce it. I anticipate that we will reduce it. We're expecting and have been awarded a $500,000 grant from Green Acres. Assuming we get that money prior to July, then the renewal of the note would be reduced to $1.5 million. And my recommendation, and the Finance Committee agreed, to increase the open space tax to a full penny and use some of that additional revenue to start to immediately retire that $1.5 million debt, so that down the road we don't ever have to go to permanent financing with it, particularly as it appears that interest rates may be starting to climb, and that may be a trend that continues for some period of time. So that's where it is. The mayor and deputy mayor and finance committee level agreed. I assume that there's been some offline discussion and that you guys will discuss that some more this evening as we have the ordinance ready for introduction. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on, we've got Resolution 2018-53 approving the year 2018 municipal budget. Is a motion to approve?
No, the public hearing on the budget will be March 22nd. But I'll be glad, Stacy, Tracy, any of you that have questions, if you want to contact me at my office after you get to see copies of this. I'll be glad to meet with you and go through it. Or at March 22nd will be the public hearing.
Your Honor, I will move to introduce the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. The next resolution is Resolution 2018-54, self-examination of budget. Is there a motion to approve?
And yeah, just to explain it, the state used to examine all municipal budgets, and because they no longer had enough staff to do that, going back, it's got to be at least 10 years, maybe 15, they put every municipality in a group. I think there's a group of 3, so that you only need to have your budget examined and approved by the state every 3rd year. As long as you meet certain criteria, and we're still in the cycle this year where we're eligible for self-examination. That means, although we still have to send our budget down to the state, it's not subject to their approval before you can adopt it at the March 22nd meeting. So this is a resolution stating that we are eligible and taking advantage of self-examination.
Any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
If I could just ask, there was, somebody said something before about public discussion and when this will be, and also if this is going to be accessible online for public to review it before we actually come back into our discussion of the matter.
Yes,
Yeah,
and as normally, Tom will, not Chickarron, Salvis in the back there, will extrapolate or edit the video portion of tonight's meeting on the budget itself, so people who don't have to watch the whole thing, they can just click it
Yeah,
in.
the presentation will be on the website. Gregory is obligated by law to publish a summary of the budget. The budget will be available on the front counter. There will be a copy at the library available for public. And as I said, anybody who would love to come in and talk about it, I love talking about it.
And tomorrow morning I'll be sending both the budget and the summary to the website, as well as publishing the summary in the newspaper.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, good night.